Welcome to this webinar on document retention. My name is Ken Byrne. I'm one of the account managers here, and I'm going to run through the document retention webinar today. So thank you all. As you can see, I'm in Trinity Street in Cambridge, and we're coming from our offices actually from Virtual Cabinet in Cambridge today. So I've got a couple of bits of housekeeping to start with. The first bit is really to look at your version of Virtual Cabinet. I must say this in every webinar. We've just released version 4.1 for early adopters, but please do look and be at least on version 4. If you don't know how to do it, just look in your Virtual Cabinet in the orb on the top left hand side, click on that, click on About, and it will tell you what version you're on. As you know, it's free to upgrade within office hours. You can do it yourselves, your external IT can do it, or you can ring your support and we can do it. And the reason I harp on about it is that we don't force anyone to go onto the latest version, but if you're not on the latest version, some of the features that I'll show you won't be accessible to you. The last thing is, separate to this, we are having another webinar which is happening at the end of April, around the 23rd, 24th of April, and that will be launching the newest part of the Virtual Cabinet family, which will be the VC app. So you've got Virtual Cabinet itself, you've got the portal, which can be used to obviously securely send clients documents, get electronic signatures for clients to send you documents back. And the next part is the app, and that will allow you to remotely access Virtual Cabinet from wherever you are in the world, from your iPad or Android device or any iOS device as well. So that's coming towards the end of April. I've got a version of it working on my phone right now, and it's actually really, really cool. And so we will be doing a webinar on that towards the end of April. If you are interested, just stick app or whatever in the questions or in the chat box, and we'll make a note of it. But we'll be doing a lot of marketing around that anyway. Okay, document retention. That's why we're here. So you probably saw from some of the things, and we all know that GDPR is in about a year now. Everyone has written their policies up and are compliant with GDPR, etc. And we've got it all sorted, but in reality, a lot of people are still not as compliant, or not staying compliant, because what they've done is written the policies and then hopefully ignored it and just got on with their day-to-day stuff. Out of the direct requests of what we did before is for Virtual Cabinet, we added the destroy function. So you always had the delete function. Now we have the destroy function, which is a manual process. We can go along, highlight a document, and hit destroy. I do always say that destroy is removes that document, the previous version of the document, the audit trail, and that it makes you GDPR compliant, and that document can no longer be recovered. But it is a manual process, and what we're really talking about now is a retention module, which is an automated process rather than the manual process. Just taking a little look back. This is an old slide. If anyone was in the earlier days, back in whatever it was, January, February last year, we started talking about GDPR, and this is what we pulled together of things that you needed to do, some of which obviously is directly related to your documents and your audit trails and that kind of stuff, which Virtual Cabinet ticks the boxes. Some are more things like training, etc., which you have to take care of. So we've looked at all that, and we've boiled it down and actually made a new module, which is our document retention module. In that process, in that last 12, 13, 15 months and for longer, and we've done a lot of stuff. So Virtual Cabinet's always been designed to be your single source of truth. That means that it's the one place in your organization where you go to look for client documents. And often with clients, I carry out a back of an envelope type review with them and say, right, where are your documents held? And clients say, well, we've got some legacy systems. Oh, we've got our S drive, our Q drive, our V drive, whatever it is on the server where we save stuff. We've got our existing paper files. We have people have Outlook folders on each individual's PC. Some people start saving on the desktop. Oh, and we save stuff in Virtual Cabinet. Oh, and we save stuff in a practice management system. And very quickly, you can go to 7, 8, 9, and sometimes a hell of a lot more places where you have to go to look to look for information and documents on a client. So VC is designed to be the single source of truth. We've done a lot of work in the last year importing legacy systems and stuff from people servers into their virtual cabinet, so that they've got one place in the organization where they know everything's stored, and that way you can flow all the things like subject access requests and document retention policies and everything else from there. Obviously, it helps you meet your legal requirements, it keeps you compliant, etc. But also it does allow you full control on your documents. You can actually set dates, or you can set document types that you want to get rid of after a certain amount of time, which I will show you a little bit later on. And the reason we've made this into an actual module is to allow you to put your policies into virtual cabinet. So your document retention policies you've already written, it now allows you to put them into virtual cabinet. Is that it's not a manual process, it's automatic, so it's never forgotten. It's always done in a timely manner. It always keeps you compliant. And typically, because destroy is such a powerful tool, i.e. when you hit destroy, the document's not going to be recovered, you typically need a senior person in the organization, a senior fee earner or someone else. You need their time to actually go along and approve what you're about to do. Why not do that at the start, get them to do it, get them to approve the module of the document retention scheme, and then that's it done, and it will run efficiently forever. And actually, just as an aside on that, I did work with a client actually late last year when we had the document first version of the document retention module out. And I spoke to them and they said, no, what I'll do is I'll organize a meeting. I'll sit down every quarter with one of my admins. We'll go through all the documents that have reached time to be destroyed. We'll sit down and we'll destroy them. And then about 6 months, 8 months later, I caught up with him and said, how many of those meetings you had? He said, well, we had the first one and then the rest we canceled because of the time, etc., etc. So with the best intentions in the world, it's not always possible. So that's why we come up with this module. Just as a kind of an aside, but I read a recent ICO report on medium-sized businesses. So I think these are businesses around 50 to 100 people, and you can read the report there. A lot of good stuff came out, but what it also came out is that areas of improvement was records management, with lack of control of processes, and effective controls to log and track secure movement of records, manual and actually electronic records as well. So virtual cabinet covers all that for you as well, and actually allows you now to order your systems as well. So we boiled all this down kind of into practical steps. So it's kind of separate to document retention, but also a complete part of document retention is, and we've modularized all this. So when we go into a client's virtual cabinet, typically most clients just have a cabinet. It'll be called clients, or it'll be called documents, or something like that. And all your documents are in there. So one of the things we can do, if you look at the top right, we can actually make a full archive cabinet. So for the accountancy sector, it's quite easy. You need to keep 6 years plus 1 year, so you can say, right, 7 years. Other people have to keep documents for 12 years, etc., etc. We'll make it whatever it is for you. But what we can do is we can take all the documents that are 7 years old and automatically move them into an archive cabinet. There's an advantage to this. That means when you do a search, you only pull back documents that are basically relevant, and all the old documents are in an archive cabinet. And of course, you can then apply your document retention policy to your archive cabinet. So that's the full archive cabinet. So that's the archive cabinet, i.e., let's say 6 years plus a further year as an example. The other thing we do is we make a semi-archive cabinet on the top left. So what we do is we say what's relevant to you. So when you look in virtual cabinet, what are you looking for? And most people say they're actually looking for this year's and last year's documents. The rest, very rarely do they have to look at a 3-year-old document or a 5-year-old document, okay? So we make a semi-archive cabinet. So we take documents, as an example, over 2 years old and move them into semi-archive. And after they sit in the semi-archive cabinet for a certain amount of years, and then they go to the full archive at 7 years. So again, it splits it down, and I'll show you in the next slide, actually, there's benefits to you in that in terms of your IT infrastructure, and there's also benefits for that in terms of search results coming back a little bit faster and a bit neater and that kind of stuff as well. So that's part of what we can do, and it does help you structure your virtual cabinet in there. And the other thing we do in people's virtual cabinets is we sometimes make an ex-client cabinet. So in your practice management system, it doesn't work for every practice management systems, but most of them, and you might mark a client as an ex-client. What we will do is we'll take the documents in virtual cabinet when you do that, and we'll automatically re-index that client to an ex-client cabinet. And again, you can apply your own document retention policy to those. And at the same time, we can make a prospect cabinet, i.e. someone rings you up and says, I'd like you to represent me. They may send you some send you some documentation or whatever. What do you do with it? Where do you keep it? Well, again, you manually put their name into the prospect cabinet. You can add the documents there. If they become a client, you set them up properly on your practice management system, and then you re-index the documents. So there, or conversely, if they don't become a client after 6 months or 8 months, should you really be holding those documents? Again, you can apply a retention policy as well. And as part of all that, there's a client rename process. So again, in your practice management system, if you change the name, if someone's put the name in wrong from LTD and they would actually like to be called limited, or someone gets married or something like that, again, you can change. If you change it in your practice management system, we can reflect those changes in virtual cabinets. So you make changes in one and you keep both completely matching each other as well. And we've modularized all those, so you don't have to have everything, you don't have to do any of it. It's mix and match as well. I'll show you that on the last slide of how we've broken that down. When I talked about the archive and the semi-archive cabinet, there is another advantage to that, which is that if you've got either a cloud server or server on site, you can put your active client cabinet on your fastest, bestest disk, the super fast, which will keep your virtual cabinet running nicely. And if you jump to the full archive cabinet, you can put that on a very old disk, etc., because you're not going to access it that much. And obviously, because we've got these re-index scripts running between each one after the length of time that you tell us to do so, and each of those cabinets will never ever get, you will suddenly won't hit 1 terabyte or whatever it will be on your server. And someone says, oh, we need to buy more space, or we need to do something, we need to do some clearing out. It will help you. So your IT people will love you, because you can have a managed storage solution across all your cabinets, etc. So you don't have any surprises. And obviously, at some point as well, you will see the movement of those documents all the way through to actually destroy. So yeah, so I'm just looking at the questions as we're doing this as well. So we don't set these up as standard within virtual cabinets. This is part of our VC enhancement. So if you're looking for an archive cabinet or a semi-archive cabinet, please ask us and we can go and set them up for you. They're bespoke to everyone, because people want to have different criteria to move things in, etc. I'm just going to jump back to the previous slide. Sorry, previous 2 slides, 3 slides. There we go. Because also within part of all this, as I said in the last year, we've done a lot of imports for people. The other thing we've done for people is people said, oh, actually, we've never marked documents that should be permanent, that should never be deleted. We've never marked things a certain ways, or we want some more index fields to help us keep compliant within GDPR and things that come up. Again, we can go back into a virtual cabinet, we can add extra index fields, we can remove them, we can show you how to do that. So some clients, their admins are pretty good at doing that, and they do it themselves, or they come to us, buy a bit of engineering time, and we can do that for you. So some of the other things we've done is gone through the entire database within virtual cabinet, found documents that should be maybe marked permanent, and made an index field called permanent, put them in there, and then part of your document retention rules when you move documents, they never move a permanent document, and therefore you would never have it destroyed. You would retain it forever. So I'll just jump back down to where I was. So there's some of the other stuff that we've done. And again, I'm just putting this up here kind of as a reminder. The ICAW and lots of other places that you've all got part of these type of groups give recommendations on when you need to keep documents, or when you need to get rid of them, or how long you should hold them for. And again, we can build all this into your virtual cabinet. Okay, so that's everything that we can do. So really what I wanted to show you is the next step, which is our task module in virtual cabinet. Now, it's a very mixed bag out there. Some people use our tasks for very simple processes, some people don't use them at all, obviously, and some people have quite complicated ones. What's really interesting, if you look at this process, which will be carried out within virtual cabinet itself, So let's say someone gets a letter or an email, etc., and they say, it's a subject access request, or a client's writing in to say now they're going to be represented by someone else as the next client, or someone writes in and say, no, under GDPR, I want you to destroy all the documents, you need to hold me, or whatever. So that document will come in, and if you look at the process, that document come in. If it's a letter, it could be scanned in and sent to the relevant manager. It could be indexed into a particular field, and you can start a task by indexing it by the way as well. So let's say this person is not really quite sure what to do with it. They would index it in, and they get a choice. Is it a subject access request? Is it a destruction request? X client, whatever you want. There's just a couple of examples I pulled. And that task would then start. Let's say in this case, it's a destruction request. So that task would be sent to the relevant person to review files. They would find all the files that they could get rid of over 7 years old and don't hold, as an example. And they would re-index them to an archive cabinet. It would give them a warning saying, "Are you really want to do this because these documents will now be destroyed," etc. They would say yes. We'd apply the document retention policy. Those documents would be destroyed in the audit trail, etc., etc. It would give a notification back to whoever, maybe the relevant manager, maybe the person, whoever kicked off the task, as you wish. But also at the same time, you could have a standard letter in your templates folder in Virtual Cabinet that could be sent out via the portal that will say to the client, "Dear client, thank you very much for your request. We've now carried it out, and we can confirm all your documents have been destroyed, that we don't need to hold," etc., etc. And that could go out via the portal, etc. So that whole process is carried out within Virtual Cabinet, and it's carried out in a managed and a fixed way. Because you've got a task, etc., you can have you can keep an overview of what's happening with the task, etc. You can put time frames on it, and it's all carried out within Virtual Cabinet. So we have put that in place in a couple of people to sit on top or alongside the document retention policies as well. So that's all there as well, ready to go, etc. There are some more. I haven't got time to go into it now, but there are some cool stuff that we can do around that as well, such as when you index the document in, it actually starts a task. So if you index into a particular field, that can actually start the task to say something needs to happen to this document and flag it up to someone, etc. So the first time I showed the document retention policy, I actually did kind of a live demo setting it up, but I found it's a little bit kind of slow and labored. So I've done a couple of screen grabs, but it's the same thing in principle. So the document retention, okay, thank you for your questions. Yes, the document retention policy is a charge for service. If you do need to know what the cost will be, please contact your account manager. It might be me in some certain cases, and I'll come back to you with the cost. We put it to our system, and it spits out a price basically. So here's my document retention policy. I've just created this one. I'm going to say it's scheduled for destruction plus 7 years. This is my example. It gives you a note of what the retention policy is, what you need to pick out, which documents are affected, what do you want to happen to them, which is destroy, and when, at what point will this occur. Okay, so you can have as many retention policies as you want with this module. So once we don't just turn it on for you and leave you go, we will give you some engineering time so someone can build a few of them for you, so you get to understand what's happening, and then you can go and build all the rest yourself. As I said, you can have multiple retention policies against multiple cabinets, etc., etc. So you'll choose a template. At the moment, you've only got destroy because that's what we've built in, but this is leaving us ability to add in other things in here, like automatic reindexes and those kind of things in the future. At the moment, it's just destroy for your document retention policy. So for in this case, I'll pick my archive cabinet, my client's archive cabinet, and I'm going to pick the documents that are scheduled for destruction. The next step is quite simple. You're going to pick a date. So in this case, obviously, the last modified date makes most sense. So that means the last time someone actually edited and looked at the document. So even if I went back and looked at a 12-year-old document, excuse me, and not that I opened it, but I edited it in some way. So I started up, I opened the document like a Word document, and I actually went into edit it, changed something, and then saved it again. And that would reset its date, and you would keep it for another 7 years. Again, you can change all this or not. Okay. So in this case, I picked last modified date, older than 7 years, etc., etc. You got everything you got to do there, you then click on destroy. You'll then click on sample. So what it'll do, it'll pull back a sample of those documents just so it gives you a feeling are these the right documents, are these the right things that I want to look at, and it just gives you a little note at the bottom which says obviously it'll only bring you back documents that you've got permission to do so. So you may not have permission to look into all cabinets, and there may be special indices that you can't see, etc., from security reason. You won't see those in that search, but it will just give you a sample of what you can see. Okay, and that's basically it in terms of the retention module. You go back and you can do that by cabinet, you can do it by index, and actually I was just going to jump into my virtual cabinet. This is my test virtual cabinet. I'll just bring it across here. So people have asked this question, and apologies, a lot of questions coming in, but most of them I'm going to cover through this, so I'm kind of ignoring your questions for now because I know I'm going to cover most of them as well. So every index field you can apply a document retention policy on. So basically anything you can search on. So for instance, you could do it on a file size, you could do it on a email from or to person, but typically it'd be document type. Typically it would be modified date. Typically it'd be whatever. So you can see all those. But anything you can search on, and you can apply a document retention policy to. So basically, if you think about any index field, especially on the right-hand side, this is my accountancy cabinet, but any of the documents you've got here, you can apply a document retention policy on. And also you can exclude things, so you can say, I want you to apply everything in this cabinet, and also you will say, actually, but I won't do it to anything marked permanent, therefore it won't be affected by the document retention policy. I said at the start, this is what we talked about. So we've modularized all these things. So I've just shown you what the document retention policy is. And basically you set into motion the documents that you want to destroy after a certain length of time. You have a look at them to see if these are the right type of ones, and then it goes. So for some people that's fantastic, and that's what they want to do. You've written the policies out already under GDPR. You've got those policies there. So all you're now doing is taking those policies and actually applying them to your store of documents within Virtual Cabinet. So you might be saying in your GDPR as well that you've got these policies, as I said, you're applying them now into Virtual Cabinet. And actually on that point, GDPR has changed our view on how we keep documents. So before, we did it like you did it as well. You would hold on to documents basically indefinitely, and that was very positive because you would say, well, these documents might help me in the future. And I have countless stories where people said, oh yes, a long-standing client of mine of 15 years suddenly comes along and says, oh, when I did this thing or that thing, could you find the documents for me? And you go and find them and you give them back to your client. That's a fantastic service, which is clearly correct. But GDPR has flipped that on its head now. The positives of holding those documents indefinitely, there's now a massive negativity because you have to have a legal basis as to reason why you should hold those documents. And if you don't have a legal basis to hold those documents, ex-client is probably the best example. If the client is no longer a client of yours, there might be a legal reason that you have to hold a document for 7 years or whatever ICAW or whatever tells you to do. But after that, you've got no legal reason to hold those documents, therefore you shouldn't be holding them. And I know people hang on to them indefinitely. You can actually build that in, as I said, into your virtual cabinet and into your retention policy. Yeah, and even something like a subject access request, if someone says, please give me everything you hold in them, you can, if you have this retention policy as a robust retention policy within your system, you can write back to them and say, actually, we only hold documents for the legal amount of time we're supposed to do so, therefore we can give you a subject access request, here's the documents that we hold in you, but you'll find nothing older than 7 years, again, whatever it is. So that's something that's completely changed, I think, within the marketplace, and it's something that we're all going to have to get our heads around in terms of destruction of documents. I did mention the reindex scripts. So these are the things like the name change, those kind of things. We can make that completely automatic. As I said, this is all modular. So some people are saying, yes, we want the retention policy, fantastic. Some people are saying, actually, the bit that I'm interested in, I was with a client last week and we went through all this, and actually they said, what I'm really interested in is that reindex script, because it takes up a lot of my admin time. When someone changes their name, we have to then go into Virtual Cabinet, we search the client, they're not there, then we realize their name has changed, so we go back in and we search in the previous name, we find them. You can find all those documents and make all that happen automatically. The VC enhancement I talked about is restructuring either the documents or the indexes themselves, indices themselves within Virtual Cabinet, but it's also adding those extra cabinets. So there's two parts of that. There's the thing that I talked about, which is the archive and the semi-archive cabinet, maybe the X-client cabinet and the prospect as well. But actually, this is a separate subject we're talking about today, but one of my great bugbears is we have this fantastic document management system that you're all using to a greater or lesser extent. And then I go to a client and they say, oh yeah, we keep our HR documents on a server, we keep our directors' documents or our partners' documents on a different part of the server that's locked down. Why not bring them all into the Virtual Cabinet? You can apply retention policies, you can apply the security to them, and you have everything in one place. And then the last thing that I've been talking about for quite a bit is tasks. So that is available in Virtual Cabinet, and we typically write the task for each individual client, but you can manage all this through it. So most of the stuff that I've shown you, actually, you can do it all manually. But as with any manual process, it's inefficient. You're going to take up a senior fee earner, a senior person's time, so they're normally quite high fee earners. If you work out the hours that they will spend working with you to work on what document you can and can't destroy, it's not something you can really give down to a more junior person. Also, it means you're not compliant in between those times. And everything's not done in a timely manner as well. So we can automate that process for you. And really, I talked about this with the GDPR modules, and most of the things that we do, we're looking to be as efficient as possible. So we're not doing things in a manual way, we're doing it in an automatic way. A bit like in some of the other webinars, if you joined them previously, in things like how you're getting documents into Virtual Cabinet. If it's 5 documents in a day that you have to manually index, great. But if it's 500 documents a day that you need to index in manually, well, maybe we can automate that process for you. So it's that kind of balance in terms of efficiency as well. So that's everything that I wanted to talk to you on document retention. This is the slide that I kind of started with, just to talk about single source of truth. Are all your documents kept within Virtual Cabinet? I have worked with one financial services client, and I think they counted up, and because they bought other companies, etc., they had 80 different places where they might have client documentation. They've now narrowed it down to, I think, about 3. Virtual Cabinet being the main store of documents. We pull in the document, we do regularly do imports for them, and we've worked with them to kind of keep their Virtual Cabinet what we call clean, which is all fixed and locked down nicely. And all the policies that I talked about in terms of document retention, they're my examples. We can actually, it's bespoke to you what you need to do, whether it's just on the X-client cabinet, for instance, if it's just on a prospect cabinet, if it's just on documents that are over a certain age, if it's just on documents of a certain particular document type that you don't need to keep, etc. We can manage all that for you. Okay, yeah, and so I was asked, the destroy function is available, I think, from version 3.7. As I said, I would encourage everyone to get onto at least the latest version, at least 4 or 4.1. It isn't turned on automatically. You can turn it on yourself if you're an admin. Just, I would say, contact support. They can turn on the destroy. I'm going to say it now because I say it every single time, so no one can ever tell me that I didn't say it. Destroy means destroy. So don't hit destroy and go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Destroy takes away the document, the previous versions of the document, and the audit trail, and to all intents and purposes, that document is no longer recoverable, and that makes you GDPR compliant. But it is a fairly hefty piece of, a hefty button, should we say, within Virtual Cabinet. So if you are going to do it, make sure you only make it available to 1 or 2 senior people who know what they're doing. So that's everything on document retention, and what we want to try and keep you compliant, meet all the legal requirements that you need to do, eliminate human error, because you'll set up the policy at the start, you'll agree to it, and then off it goes, and it just runs and runs and runs, and it gives you full control over your documents and your systems. That's great. I'm going to just quickly glance now. That's everything I want to talk about, and I'll quickly glance now to the questions in case I missed anything. As I said, I apologize, but I did ignore quite a few questions because I know I was going to cover them a little bit later. And then do look out for the new VC app that will be launching a little bit later in this month as well. Okay, that's everything I want to talk about. I'll just have a quick glance at the questions, but I think I've covered everything that's there. If I haven't covered it, we do record all the questions anyway, and the relevant account manager will get back to you. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks, bye.